AMD is currently trading at $83.48 a share. Its market cap is $101 billion, the PE ratio of 35. We go ahead and compare that to Intel today. It's trading at $57.86 with a market cap of $233 billion and a PE ratio of 13. It also has a dividend, which AMD does not have, of 2.4%. If we go ahead and look at the past year, Intel stock is down 6%, while AMD is up over 55%. Over the past 5 years, AMD up an incredible 2,200% compared to Intel, which increased 91% this year. Hello, everybody. This is StockerFinance. I'm your host, David Scheuer, and this is Intel versus AMD. Which is the better investment? We're going to be making some comparisons today. Make sure to follow me, twitter.com/StockerFinance for more information. There's also a once per month newsletter link below if you want to check that out. Let's go ahead and just dive into the fundamentals here. So first off, we're going to go ahead and look at the revenue segments for Intel. I'm going to go all over Intel's fundamentals, and then we're going to look at all of AMD's fundamentals, and we'll do some comparisons, we'll look at some product stuff, and other information as well throughout the video. So Intel currently does $19.6 billion in revenue as of Q1 2021, which just reported its results a couple days ago. If we go ahead and look at its operating or gross profit, it's at $10.8 billion in gross profit with operating income of around $4 billion. Its net income at $3.36 billion, and its margins, its profit margin, which is declining over the past few quarters at 17%. If we go ahead and look at its operating expenses here at $4.95 billion, kind of remaining flat over the past few years, although we did see a massive increase year over year of 43.83%, and revenue remaining kind of flat at around 0%, just under 0% growth this year. The past quarter, If we look at free cash flow of $1.57 billion with cash on hand of $5 billion, it's significantly down from year over year. Q1 2020, you can see there it was almost at $12 billion. Now it's down to just $5 billion in cash on hand here. And we go ahead and dive into AMD to make some comparisons here. We'll see revenue at $3.4 billion with gross profit at just $1.58 billion and net income at $555 million. Now you may say, wow, that's significantly down from Q4 2020. What happened? Why was their net income at almost $2 billion and now it's only at $555 million? What happened in Q4 of 2020? Well, let me go ahead and answer that here because it was at $1.78 billion in Q4 2020. However, that's really just due to an income tax benefit of $1.3 billion. So subtract that from the net income, and you'll see the net income is actually growing in Q1 2020. And that's really just due to that net income tax benefit. That's all it was. It was associated with the valuation allowance release, and that explains the whole situation there. It's nothing to be too alarmed of if you are an AMD investor. But look at its profit margin at 16% here, and its operating expenses continuing to increase, similar to the whole semiconductor industry right now at $929 million in operating expenses, with operating expenses year over year growing at 44%, pretty similar, actually just above the operating expense growth of Intel. If we go ahead and look at its cash on hand, continuing to grow on a year over year basis and quarter over quarter basis to $1.76 billion, putting its bottom line in a much better position for investors. Just shows if its cash on hand is growing, it shows it's a healthy company, which is a good sign for investors. If we go ahead and look at Intel, though, while you're looking at fundamentals, you may have noticed that, okay, Intel's doing a lot more net income than AMD. They're doing a lot more in revenue, etc. What's going on here? I thought AMD was this crazy awesome company. Well, you have to remember that Intel is this big behemoth of the company. It's been around for a long time. Its market cap is more than double that of AMD, and its PE ratio is only 13. So Intel is actually more fairly valued, you could say, than that of AMD, simply just looking at its PE ratio. It also offers a dividend of 2.4%, and its market cap, again, is that more than double that of AMD's. AMD's PE ratio, so AMD's market cap is $100 billion, and then its PE ratio is around 30. Now, if I compare that to the entire semiconductor industry, I wouldn't say Intel or AMD is wildly overvalued just based off its PE ratio, because NVIDIA's PE ratio is well over 60. So NVIDIA is significantly, if we're going to say, AMD's overvalued compared to Intel, well, then NVIDIA would be insanely overvalued compared to Intel. On top of that, you have Micron Technologies with the PE ratio very similar to AMD as well. So I would not say AMD is necessarily out of control with its PE ratio of 30. In this space, in the whole technology sector, that's not an unusual PE ratio. Its PE ratio is most likely higher than Intel's by almost double Intel's PE ratio. And the reason for that is primarily due to AMD being a more popular stock than Intel. It's a more exciting stock to hold on to. It's a more desired stock by retail investors especially. especially over the past few years. And it's a newer company. It's more exciting. Its stock is more volatile than that of Intel's, and that attracts a lot of investor and trading attention. Now, let's look at the past Q1 2021 results. We'll look at AMD here, and then we'll go ahead and look at Intel. And what we're really looking at here is growth. We already looked at some of the fundamentals and the numbers for this quarter, but let's look at the year-over-year growth as well as quarter-over-quarter growth. Because what you're going to notice for AMD is a revenue increased 93% year-over-year. Gross profit up 94%. Yes, gross margin is flat. They touched on that in the earnings call, and I was a little concerned about that, why the gross margin didn't increase while all their other, why their gross profit and revenue, net income all increased substantially. What happened with the gross margin there? But they did explain it and wasn't too worrying of a factor, at least in my opinion. Operating expenses increased 45%, but again, compare that to its revenue. Revenue is increasing faster than operating expenses, which is great to see. Operating income up a whopping 274% year over year. Net income up 243% year over year. And earnings per share up 221% year over year. And that's on a GAAP quarterly financial result basis. Quarter over quarter, revenues up 6%. And again, you have to account for that tax benefits. You're going to see net income down 69%. But we already did the math there. Net income without that tax incentive there, or tax benefit, whatever it was called, my bad, it was growing quarter over quarter. So it's not too big of a worry there. Same with earnings per share. But year over year, again, a 221% growth. Net income, 243% growth. That's absolutely incredible. And it's very similar on a non-GAAP basis as well. Now let's look at Intel. And what you're going to see, it's a very different story. The growth here is just not the same. Revenue, on a year-over-year basis, it's down 1%. Gross margin, down 5.4%. R&D and spending is up 3%. If we go ahead and look at operating margin, it's down 16.7%. Net income down 41%, and earnings per share down 37%. Even on a non-GAAP basis, you have revenue flat. You have gross margin down 6.1%. You have R&D and spending still up 2%. You have operating margin down 6.7%. You have net income down 6%, and earnings per share still down 1%. Compare that to, AMD's immense growth here, and AMD's just blowing Intel out of the water right now in terms of growth. And we have to find out why that is. And, one reason, if we go ahead and just look at AMD's guidance here, is the future for AMD just seems so much brighter than that of Intel. And we're going to take a look at the products here and compare the products as well as some market share here in a second here to show really what AMD's doing here. And we'll talk about that in a second. I'm actually going to wait to touch on that. First off, let's just talk about AMD's guidance here, because this is really what's important, especially with facing this whole chip shortage situation in the United States right now and around the world. We need to know what's going to happen in the future. And not only is AMD saying that they're in a very, great spot, they seem like they're growing really fastly just based on a year-over-year basis. Their fundamentals seem pretty healthy. They're increasing their cash on hand. They're a profitable company with $555 million net income just in Q1 2021. But on top of that, they increased their guidance for expected revenue growth up from 37% to 50% over 2020. And that's incredible. That's really good for this company. That's exactly what you want to see if you are an AMD investor. And now let's go ahead and look at market share. And by the way, Intel, just to compare its guidance to AMD, it did not give the same sort of guidance that AMD did. And we saw its stock reflect that when it decreased after hours when they reported their financial results for that quarter, which is Q1 2021. Now let's look at market share here. Since about 2016, AMD has been clawing market share from Intel. However, this past quarter, you may have seen a lot of headlines about this. Intel actually took back a tiny bit of market share from AMD. Now, if you're an AMD investor, should you be alarmed? Does this make that Intel the better investment now? Not necessarily. If this was happening on a quarter-over-quarter basis, if we're seeing Intel continually take back market share from AMD over the next, let's say, 3 or 4 quarters, that would be concerning for AMD investors. And that means Intel is probably doing something very right with its products, especially here if we're looking at the CPU market chart. But right now, over the past 2016, AMD's continually taking market share. I don't see this as too alarming for AMD that it's slightly decreased over the past quarter. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. If we go ahead and look at the desktop market share, very similar story to the CPU market share. AMD continually and actually overtook Intel in market share as of Q1 2020. and it's been taking market share ever since about 2016, 2017 from Intel. But in Q1 2020, we did see Intel take back a little bit of market share and surpass AMD in market share once again, but they're pretty even right now in desktop market share. AMD currently at 48%. All right, if we look at laptop market share, different story. AMD or Intel actually didn't take back any market share from AMD. Quite the opposite. AMD took more market share, from Intel. AMD is now up to 22% market share in Intel. Although, Intel's still dominating the laptop market here. It's at, a pretty significant amount there. But AMD about 78% for Intel compared to 22% for AMD. But AMD, again, this is since about 2019. It's been innovating and it's been taking market share from Intel. And for Intel investors, it's becoming increasingly worrying that AMD is growing this rapidly and taking this much market share every single quarter and every single year from Intel. If you look at the server market, it's a different story. So Intel, just the past year, AMD has started to really get into the server market and really start to take some market share from Intel. They're up to 5.1% market share. They're really trying to hit that 10% mark. Intel is starting to lose market share to AMD, even though it's pretty much dominated the server market at pretty much 100% market share compared to AMD. And, over the past year, that's just not what's going on right now. You see that AMD is starting to climb, but it's still not entirely significant. It'll be interesting, though, to see whether Intel takes back the market share and maintain its dominance, or if we see AMD continuing to take market share just like it has with these other market segments. Now let's go ahead and talk about the products here. And what you're going to notice is AMD pretty much dominates in almost all segments for its products. Here's an average FPS test, and this is for the entire test suite in 1080p. You can see AMD's Ryzen 9 5900X at $550. Same with the Ryzen 9 5950X, as well as the Ryzen 7 580 or 8000. I don't know why I'm misspeaking here. 5800X and the Ryzen 5 5600X as well. So it has the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if we go ahead and look at the next one, you're going to see a very similar story. This is for single-threaded performance ranking as well here. The highest one is the best on the chart. You see the AMD's Ryzen's pretty much dominate the entire. You have the Core i7 down there for a little bit, but AMD is still dominating in this segment. Same with multi-threaded performance ranking as well. Intel climbs a little higher, but still AMD's significantly better on this as well. If you look at Handbrake Pyre, the lower is better on this, by the way. You're going to see that AMD is also better. And if you go ahead and look at this as well, which is Handbrake times 264 power efficiency here, and the bottom left corner is the best. You'll see it's almost all AMD in the bottom left corner, and that's exactly same on this chart as well. Bottom left corner is best. And again, for power efficiency here, and again for here. And these are just different types of tests they're running, by the way, if you are not familiar with the semiconductor industry and how they test these different types of stuff. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. This is just one company taking a bunch of different data points and running a bunch of different tests in different ways. So let's move on here, though. And what this company specifically said about it, and this is one that I've been using a lot. I really love their research with the charts they make. They said AMD wins the CPU war overall right now, but an Intel processor could still be the better choice depending on your needs. And that's always going to be the case. Some people will need Intel processors for very specific needs, but right now AMD is definitely winning overall. And if you want the best in overclocking or software support, if you want productivity performance without buying a discrete GPU, Team Blue is the brand, blah, 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 blah. Now, let's go ahead and just look at this chart here, because this will really show you where Intel dominates compared to AMD, and it's in not very many spaces. So Intel slightly winning in overclocking, drivers, and software. But that's only 2 compared to the 8 segments AMD is winning, which is CPU pricing and value, gaming performance, content creation and productivity, specifications, power consumption, process node, architecture, and security. AMD is really just dominating in that segment. So who wins here? Which is the better investment? Which is the better stocker? Which is the better company overall for investors right now? Well, it's really up to you. If you believe that Intel is going to be the best in the future, you believe that they're going to continue to take market share from AMD, maybe you want to lean towards Intel. But currently, in the current state, if I'm comparing the future for both of these companies, where I think both of them are heading, fundamentals, Intel is still slightly winning. That's just due to it being a more fairly valued company. However, in terms of growth and future market share, AMD is just completely dominating. And I highlighted them both because future market share, we did see Intel take a little bit back right now. But in future growth, which I should have maybe separated that in a different segment here, AMD is growing substantially right now. Its fundamentals are out of control on a year-over-year basis, whereas Intel's declining year over year. However, with future market share, the only reason I kind of tied them in this segment is because Intel did take back some market share in specific segments this quarter, Q1 2021, and or this year. So yeah, that is true, but again, I don't see that as a super alarming thing. And if AMD continues to claw back and claw more market share from Intel in all the different segments, then this is completely going to go to AMD as well. Guidance, without a doubt, AMD, we already saw them increase their revenue guidance from 37% over 2020 to 50% over 2020, which is really impressive. Their products, we just went over that as well. AMD simply has it's more innovative than that of Intel. Its products are just simply better. Its CPUs are better. Its graphics cards are better. AMD's making better products right now, and there's no doubt about that. If you don't believe my word, if you're more of a computer person, please leave a comment down below. I've done quite a bit of research on this. I know people in the semiconductor industry, and I firmly believe that AMD's products are better, even when you just look at the charts, when you look at the results of AMD's products and their efficiency, their power compared to Intel. AMD is the clear winner as of right now, and they seem like they're going to be the clear winner for time to come as well, with so many new products coming out in the near future. Now let's talk about leadership, because we haven't really touched on this. But Warren Buffett always says leadership is one of the most important parts of any company. And if you're investing in a company, you're not only investing in the products they're selling, you're not only investing in their fundamentals, but you're also investing in the people that work there, especially the CEO who's leading the ship, who's leading the company, and hopefully growing it, and hopefully will lead to a nice return for investors in that company. But you have to believe in the CEO. And personally, I believe in Lisa Su, and I don't know why I said List Su. I'm really sorry, Lisa Su. Dr. Lisa Su is an absolute goddess. I'm a big fan of her. I've been watching this channel for a while. And not just that, but she turned the entire company around. She took over on October 8th, 2014 for AMD, and has grown the stock an astronomical amount. And not just the stock price, because that's not really what matters at all right now. If you're looking long term, the fundamentals of the company, the products they're releasing, AMD has just been completely taking off ever since Lisa Su, and the stock has actually followed that as it does. Whereas Intel, they switched CEOs multiple times and they have a new CEO since this year, Patrick B. Gelsinger. And personally, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And personally, if you're switching CEOs like that, it's going to cause a disruption, and it's going to cause the balance of the company to be thrown off a little bit, because people have to adapt to new leadership. The structure of the entire business might change. There's going to be layoffs, etc. Lisa Su, she's been established there, for over 6 years now. She's established her presence. She's not going away anytime soon. She's done an excellent job. So I firmly believe in the leadership of AMD. I believe in the leadership of AMD greater than that of Intel. So in my opinion, AMD wins this battle, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's kind of a unique video. I don't do this kind of head-to-head videos that often. I'm more into the deep analysis videos. But anyways, twitter.com/StockerFinance. Definitely please subscribe and like this video, share it with friends. It helps me out a lot. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers, guys. We're at 2,000 right now, or just over it. We're heading towards 10,000. Let's try to hit that. That would be so awesome. Anyways, twitter.com/StockerFinance for more information. Check out these videos as well if you're interested. And the newsletter link will be below. It's just a once per month newsletter. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.